2025 CrossFit Games ended a week ago. This year was kind of a comeback year after a rough year last year with Lazar's death and a lot of the stuff that kind of surrounded that. So the idea was supposed to be kind of bringing it back to like classic CrossFit, make things smaller and kind of just tighten it up before we keep pushing forward like we were. I think this year's games accomplished that really well with the programming and the location, but there was a few things that I wanted to talk about. The first thing I wanted to talk about was Dave Castro was sadly right again. In 2009, I think, or maybe 2010, Rich Froning was coming up and Dave Castro watched Rich at sectionals and he's like, hey, I've never seen this before. This guy's going to win the games. And then Rich goes on to win 4 years in a row. And then in 20, I think it was 14 or 15, Matt's at the Northeast Regional and Dave Castro goes, oh, I've never seen this before. This guy's going to win the games. And then Matt goes on to win 5. And then 2021, Hopper destroyed, I think it was either the Syndicate Crown or the MAC. And Dave Castro comes out. He's like, oh, this guy's special. This guy's like Matt Fraser, Rich Froning level. Like he's going to win the games. And for the last few years, it's been kind of nice to look at Dave and be like, you were wrong about this one. And then now Hopper won this year. So I guess Dave is 3 for 3 on that. So nice job, Dave. My biggest takeaway from the games this year was Event 9, or Running Isabel. I loved this one because everyone kept talking about, oh, it's going to be unbroken. Like, what's the point? Like, they should have made it heavier so that people go unbroken. But I think this was the best programmed games event probably in the last 3 years at least. One of the 10 general physical skills is speed. And we often only test that in a running, like the 550 meter, I think it was, or 550 yard sprint in 2021. And so what I really liked about this one is it was testing speed in a way that I don't think people train speed, and I don't think people test speed often. It was, how fast can you get a 155-pound barbell from the floor to over your head? Tudor Magda was in, I think, the second to last heat, and every rep he did, or every 1.5 reps he did, the person next to him was only doing 1. Tudor was literally just moving the bar up and down faster than the guy next to him, and that was so cool to see, and I like that because the way we test speed most of the time is just running. How fast can you run? But there's a million other forms of speed in other domains. And so I thought seeing it with a 155-pound snatch was awesome. And I think a lot of people get into the habit of every time they're doing a snatch, it moves from the floor to overhead at this one speed. Like they just get used to, this is how fast I move a 155-pound barbell. Because in almost every CrossFit workout where you're using 155 pounds, you can just move it at that speed and go unbroken, do like faster transitions, something like that where you can make up for it. But what I really liked about this event is it was just move the bar faster. And I thought that was a beautiful way to test speed. And I don't think it's something that's been done at the games, maybe even ever before, but for sure not within the last few years. And you even heard it on the Boys Interrupted podcast. They were talking about, oh, we're going to go unbroken. Everybody's going to go unbroken. I wish that they had made this like 165 or 175 pounds because we're all going to go unbroken. That's what, like, I think it was Dallin Pepper and Jason Hopper were saying. But then you saw this event and yes, they all could have gone unbroken. They all could have gone unbroken. But people were breaking at the end, not because it was the perfect weight, but because they had to move the bar faster than they were expecting to, so their legs were just gassed. Obviously, they could all go unbroken on that if they wanted to, but there was nowhere to hide in that workout. You just had to move the bar faster than you wanted to. And so I just think that was such a cool event. And I think it was a little nuanced, and maybe not everybody caught that, or maybe everybody was just thinking, oh, unbroken, or who's going to go unbroken, or how's whatever. But it was just so cool to see somebody doing a 1.5 reps for the person next to them's 1 rep. So that was my favorite event of the weekend, and I think one of the best programmed events in a long time. On Shut Up and Scribble, Bryson and JR were talking about whether this year was unknown and unknowable. And there's one thing I wanted to talk about under the umbrella of unknown and unknowable, and that is that simplicity, I think, is a form of unknown and unknowable. You go to the games every year, and there's kayaking, and there's swimming, and there's obstacle courses, and there's cargo nets, and there's this and that and this and that. And then you show up, and it's like thrusters and rope climbs, and it's snatches and running. And I think that doing that every once in a while, first of all, I think it was great for this year because we were trying to like really dial things back. But I think that simplicity is a form of unknown and unknowable. It's a form of constantly varied. Who knows how much time people spent in a pool, or how much time people spent doing cargo nets, or how much time people spent doing outdoor biking, and then they get to the games and it's just classic CrossFit stuff. So I think that's a form of unknown and unknowable, because the idea with CrossFit is be prepared for everything. Anything that comes out of that hopper, you're ready for. Even if that means it's just simple, classic in the gym CrossFit. That's a form of unknown and unknowable. That's a form of constantly varied. Only thing I would say is I wish that because what I just said, simplicity being a form of unknown and unknowable, I wish that they had kept things a little bit tighter, because then people would have been preparing. Are we going to have outdoor biking? Are we going to have rowing? Are we going to have swimming in a pool? Are we going to have this? Are we going to have that? If they had kind of kept it a little bit secret, because they came out months in advance and said, oh, it's going to be classic CrossFit. It's going to be this. It's going to be that. I wish they had kept it a little tighter so that people getting ready for the games were preparing for all that stuff. And then it comes and it's just classic CrossFit. That's the idea of CrossFit. Be ready for anything that comes out. Let me know what you think about that. Do you agree that simplicity is a form of unknown and knowable, or it is a form of constantly varied? My biggest gripe with this whole entire programming, actually, is that they did not mandate which arm you did your shoulder to overhead on. So we go out of our way to test something that clearly exposed some people. I mean, we saw Jeff like wobbling with that dumbbell overhead. They didn't mandate which arm you had to do your shoulder to overhead on. So we saw people do all 30 of them on their dominant arm. And so you go out of your way to use a single dumbbell like that. And then you don't mandate that you have to do your non-dominant arm. So then you have people doing all 30 reps on their dominant arm. Is like, so CrossFit's work capacity across broad times and right-handed domains would have been much better if it had been like 4 rounds and each round you have to alternate hands or something like that. I don't like that there's people who could have been insanely good on their right hand and then on their left, they just got to hide that and not even use it. I think if the test is work capacity across broad time modal domain, you should be able to have good work capacity on your left hand as well. This was my first year going to the games, and the one thing I realized is that CrossFit is way more fun to watch online. And that might be a controversial take, but I have way more fun in the past few years watching the games stream than I had watching it in person, for a few reasons. The first is that when you're in person, you have no idea who's in the lead compared to when you're online. If you're watching it online, they always have like a camera on the leaderboard, and that's actually one of the complaints, is that they're always on the leader, but at least you know who's in the lead or kind of know the story. When you're watching in person, it just looks like everybody's everywhere and you like can't really tell who's in the lead super well. Maybe that was my vantage point because I was looking at the field from the finish line. The second thing is that a lot of CrossFit is the data, is the numbers, is the story. If you're in the arena, you don't even know what the workout is. And if it's something like event 2, you're like, what the hell am I watching? It takes like 6 heats before you're like, oh, that's what they're doing next. Whereas if you're online, a lot of the times they have the workout or they have what they're doing next written along the top. The third is, like I said, a lot of the story comes from the numbers. There's split times, who went unbroken, who did this, and you can't keep track of all that if you're watching it in person. And so watching it online, you know, they're like, oh, his last round was this, and now this round is this. But when you're watching it in person, it's just like you just see them moving. So yeah, that's my maybe controversial take, is that CrossFit's way more fun to watch online than it is in person. This last thing is something that I would like to claim that I saw coming, and that is Lucy Campo doing so well. It was around semifinals time last year. I was making a video called like The Specialists, and it was who was the best at gymnastics, who was the best that had the best engine, who was the best at weightlifting, blah, 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 blah. I made a male version, and then I was working on a female version that I couldn't get out in time, so I scrapped it. But what I found was Lucy Campo had been to the games one time, and I think it was 2022. And in that year, she was a rookie. She won the only 2 events that I would consider to be an engine event, and that was Jackie Pro and the ski swim workout. And when I saw that, she beat Tia, she beat Laura, she beat everybody in 2022 on those 2 events. I was like, holy crap. She has the best engine of all the girls. Like by far, just off of those 2 workouts. If you win those 2 workouts in 2022, I'm ready to claim you as having the best engine. And they're kind of different engine workouts almost. And so to see her win both that year was insane. I would like to say that I saw this coming, but I had no idea because I knew she was coming back from like a wrist injury and stuff. And just seeing this is insane. This is not a fluke. I promise you, this is not a fluke. If she wins those 2 workouts in 2022, then gets hurt and she comes back and now does this, expect to see her at the top for the next few years. I don't know how old she is. Let me look how old she is. She's like 28 or 29. So she's going to be in the top 5 at least for the next few years. She's got the best engine out of all the girls. And now she's shown that she can hang in an even broader test like what we had last week. Also, it was so cool the way she was like one-arm zombie cleaning those squats because it hurts her wrist to front rack. That was like the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like that is just so adaptable and like it's just gangster. I really don't know what else to say about it. It's just cool. Anyway, those are my thoughts for the 2025 games. Everybody's talked about all the other stuff a bunch, so I just want to come on here and say some stuff that I thought maybe people hadn't talked about already. If you guys have any video ideas that you want to see on this channel, put them in the comments and let me know what you think about the stuff that I said. Peace.